College Football Nerd's going to do a quick, almost model and picks only discussion of Northwestern and Auburn. We are running out of time and running out of steam late on a Sunday night, post Christmas, getting into our work week. But we didn't want to go without at least discussing this game. Northwestern fans, you've seen us recently with the Ohio State preview, and Auburn fans with the Iron Bowl. You already know the drill. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Helps us out a ton. Also, share us anywhere you can. If it's your forum, if it's Twitter, if it's Facebook, that helps us out a whole lot. We don't do Patreon or anything like that. This is mostly a labor of love, but we want to get the word out as much as possible. Okay, Josh, so there's a couple of interesting points about this game. For me, we were talking before we hit record. Look, it's been well noted on this channel, Northwestern has an elite passing defense and a great defense overall. We actually took a lot of heat from Clemson fans for saying in our Clemson-Ohio State preview that Northwestern has a better defense than Clemson. I don't know how many Clemson fans are thinking they hold Ohio State to 22, especially the ones that are calling us idiots for saying that, but I stand by it. The one thing that we saw in the Ohio State game was that they can give up some rushing yards. They have a fairly, at least statistically, mediocre run game. Problem is, Auburn doesn't really have the run game to take advantage of it. And so I don't know if Auburn's going to be able to score at all in this game. I mean, Ohio State scored 22. I know transitive property doesn't work here. We don't have a lot of interconnecting data points, but how do we feel about Auburn scoring any points in this game? I don't know. So the other thing is who coaches in this game. Is it Steele? I mean, we know Steele is the interim guy. He had the signing day press conference. Gus Malzahn's gone. Chad Morris running this offense. Is Auburn's offense better or worse without Gus Malzahn giving nudges in a direction one way or the other? Auburn fans might say that Chad Morris is better. Josh, you said when we were talking that you don't necessarily think that's the case. I agree with you. This has the potential to be pretty bad against a good defense. I want you to get us into the model. We promised a quick video. I'm getting tired. So tell us what the model says, and then we'll get some picks.
Our model, if it's the first time you tuned in, is relational. So it looks at how you did against your opponents and how they did against everyone else to get an idea of how strong you are or not. We generally hold to the idea that pure raw statistics aren't useful in college football because there's a lack of parity, because teams play limited schedules, and your opponent's strengths and how you did against those strengths is probably the best indicator for success. With that said, there's not a single cross data point between the SEC and any other conference, or the Big Ten and any other conference. Our model, nor any model, can account for that. Some models look at recruiting, they look at prior years, and the more accurate ones this year are going to do that and weight based on that stuff. We philosophically don't, because we want our model to be a baseline based off only what you've done on the field this year, and we don't want to be blinded by something like saying the SEC is the best recruiting conference, so they have to be the best. We want to actually see it play it on the field, but we don't have out-of-conference games that normally help to regulate that. So bear in mind with this model, it's assuming the two conferences are equal. With that in mind, Auburn allows 100% of opponent averages running. They allow teams to about 90% of their passing averages. Auburn's been a pretty average defense by SEC standards. In Northwestern's case, relative to the Big Ten, 160% of rush averages, 70% of passing averages. Something that maybe people don't realize is Auburn statistically, assuming conferences are equal, a little bit better against the run than Northwestern. Northwestern, they've been great in terms of scoring and in terms of holding teams, to low numbers. There's an argument that may be a little bit due to the way the Big Ten structured this year. Let's not even get into it. The reality, though, is that neither one of these teams has been very productive offensively. Both these teams sub 7 yard per attempt. 7.5 is the mark we set for competency. If you're not hitting 7.5, the offense is usually not really functional. And if you're not hitting 6.5, it usually doesn't work at all. Our model is predicting that actual production is going to be sub 6. So neither teams are getting 6 yards per attempt. That's just not going to move the sticks. The difference in this game is the run and really scoring consistency. Auburn, yard per carry better than Northwestern. So they have a rushing edge, about 5 yards per carry to 3.8. But Northwestern has found ways to score. They've gotten defensive scores, turnovers, and because of that, it actually thinks Northwestern is able to score more points in this game, and it has Northwestern 21-16. That leads into the point Daniel was bringing up. Is it better to have Morris or Malzahn? I think if you were playing an below average defense, if you're playing a South Carolina this year, it might be better not to have Malzahn in the mix. It might be better to play a clear, coherent offensive scheme where you're just trying to move the sticks and get first downs. In this game, if you're Auburn, you want to have a handful of explosive plays because you really just want 20 to 30 points. And if you try to move the ball slowly, and Morris is some ways kind of almost a traditional West Coast scheme with some RPO elements thrown in, I don't think that's the right mix against Northwestern. I don't think you're going to get your points, honestly. So because of that, I'll go ahead and say I've got Northwestern, and I'm going to say 20-17 in this game, right at the spread. It won't shock me if either team wins, but I have a hard time seeing where Auburn's going to get points. I have a hard time especially seeing it given they're going to run a more traditional offense. The one thing that may sort of overcome that, or the thing that's going to determine this game more than anything else, in my opinion, is going to be Auburn's ability to rely on the run. Hopefully Tank Bigsby's healthy and available for a large number of carries, because Auburn is going to need to run their way to scores. And I think if Auburn has to start throwing, one, I don't think it's going to be particularly effective, and two, I think it has the potential to create turnovers that loses Auburn the game.
And Auburn fans are going to look at that Ohio State game and see that Northwestern really couldn't do anything offensively. And that was why Northwestern lost the game. Ohio State is susceptible to really stressing their corners in the vertical passing game, and Northwestern can't really take advantage of that. The problem is, in this game for Auburn, Ohio State's front seven and defensive line, they're a lot better than Auburn's this year. They're a better run defense than Auburn is this year, which sort of gives a poor offense a free pass, or makes things a lot easier for them than forcing them to have to win in the air. So where Auburn can't exploit the weaknesses of Northwestern's defense, I think the flip side of that is Auburn also can't exploit the weaknesses of Northwestern's offense, which is the passing game. I think Northwestern's going to be able to run the ball a little bit. I do think the calculus changes a little bit if Tank Bigsby is healthy, because he dramatically improves this run offense for Auburn. I'm right there with you, man. We never do this, but I'm going to go 2017 as well, Northwestern. And this is not a shot at Auburn. This is technically the runner-up in the Big Ten. So Auburn fans playing within 3 points in this game is not anything to, thumb your nose at. They also have a lot of – look, Auburn fans aren't going to be upset if they lose this game. Everything right now in the Auburn fans' mind reasonably is, let's get rolling on the Harsin era and let's move on, close this chapter for Gus Malzahn, and they are already on to next year. So I don't know that the team wants to get a win, but I don't think Auburn fans are going to be totally crushed if they don't win this game. Any more thoughts on this game before we wrap it up?
The one thing I'll close with is a lot of Auburn fans may look at the Ohio State result and how many yards Ohio State rushed for. The problem for Northwestern in that game is that they had to face a very explosive RPO attack, and they said, hey, we're going to drop in coverage and drop our linebackers, and we're going to give you the underneath run until you get towards a red zone and shut down. It's the way you traditionally defend any RPO attack, including Malzahn's. And the way you stop those attacks is by clamping down in the red zone. The first 3 red zone trips, after marching down the field running like crazy, Northwestern gave up 6 points in 3 tries. And that is, I think, the thing that may really stymie Auburn in this game. Traditionally, and we talked about this for years, and we made a big deal of it in our preview, Auburn's offense relies on their red zone conversion percentage. It is RPO based, and you can tell if they're good or bad in a given year statistically by looking at their red zone touchdown percentage. This year, they're not very good. Northwestern is awesome in the red zone. And I think the most likely thing here for Auburn is that you get a lot of yards between the 20s, but you may struggle tremendously in converting those into touchdowns. And that's why we both have scores that rely on a lot of field goals. And I think this is going to be a real field goal heavy game for Auburn. They may get a lot more yards than Northwestern and win by a very small margin.
And no, this is the point where we wrap it up, but I have one more question. I think it's interesting, and it may be, other than the last playoff game, a while before we talk. So, let's do a little hypothetical. Transitive property doesn't work here, but there are some indicators that may be of concern. Let's say Auburn, out of nowhere, wins this game 34-17. Does that give you real concern about Ohio State going into the Clemson game, or are they completely unrelated?
If Auburn were to go into this game and win 34-17, well, first, it's hard to impugn much because I'm not sure what an SEC team doing well is going to necessarily reflect on an ACC team. Yeah, I think it would be a bad sign. Northwestern was really dominant defensively in the Big Ten, and if Auburn is able to move the ball well, it's going to be kind of an indictment. I think the biggest thing is if they can pass the ball well, that'd be a little scary more than anything. But I'll close with this. I don't really expect that to happen either, because we heard a lot of the same comments with Minnesota and Auburn last year, and even we didn't pick up on it. Now, we got sort of tricked by Auburn's explosion late, like putting a ton of rushing yards on Alabama, who was literally starting third-string guys at the defensive line, and we just didn't give enough credit to who they were playing, how they were playing, and they got stopped cold by Minnesota. Half that discussion is the fact that the Big Ten typically has played pretty good defense, especially against the run game. In recent years where the Big Ten has gotten exposed, has been some of their defenses have gotten lit up through the air. And I think it's because, quite frankly, the past few years, this year included, there are not many good quarterbacks and there aren't many good sets of receivers in the Big Ten. And that would be the thing that was concerning is, Justin Fields did not throw the ball well at all in Northwestern. And Northwestern is going to probably run a very different defense. They're probably going to be a lot more traditional. It's going to allow Auburn to throw the ball better. And people don't need to overreact to that because they were totally defending the pass and giving up the run. And they're going to probably play Auburn straight up. But I would definitely be concerned if Auburn all of a sudden has a viable passing attack when they haven't had one all year. That would really concern me that maybe a lot of Ohio State's issues, and they've had bad issues against the pass, might be even worse than we realize because it sort of reflects on where the passing games are at in the Big Ten. And realize if you think that's me harping on the Big Ten super negatively, it's kind of coming from a point of me conceding that Auburn in the SEC does not have a very good passing attack. So I wouldn't expect them to do well against a good Big Ten defense.
Right. And it was a hypothetical. I don't expect Auburn to put up 34 points either. But if they do, it could be a canary in the coal mine. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Even though this was a short one and we didn't get into super detail, you can still let us know what you think the score is going to be in the comments, and we will get down there and get chatty with you. Y'all have a great week. God bless and Happy New Year. Thanks, y'all.